Hey guys, Chad Hoover, KayakBassFishing TV, and this is another subscriber question. You're gonna love this one. You've been waiting for a while. All right, so with the recent solar eclipse, everybody knows a little bit more about the sun and moon and the placement of the stars than they ever have before. So this is the perfect time for me to talk to you about moon phases. More importantly, solunar phases and the effect it has on the fishing activity, and why you should be aware of it. So Raymond Triplet said, have been waiting for months for the phase video. Where does Missouri fall when you and Fluke refer to North and South Lakes? So, you know what? I appreciate the question, Raymond. Sorry it took so long to get to this video, but I really wanted to be able to do a good job of covering it, and so I wanted to make sure that I did it when I had time to cover the topic thoroughly and accurately. So let's talk about solunar phases. First and foremost, it's one of the things that people either really believe in or think it's total hogwash. And for years, I fell in the think it's total hogwash category until I started keeping detailed and accurate logs of both my fish catches and my lack of success, when I was using what I was using, and then why I thought I was using it at the particular time. So I'm gonna make this as short and as simple as I can, but I'm going to task you with doing a little bit more research on your own. Start a fishing journal. Starting a fishing journal will help you prove or disprove this theory to yourself. And if you do it right, you're gonna prove it, because I'm 100% confident in my approach to using this to catching fish. So first and foremost, the biggest thing that people say is, you believe in all that moon stuff? And to answer your question, yes, I absolutely believe in it. But what I have happen a lot of times is I hear people say, they started reading the charts, they got an app, they started figuring out what the feeding times were, but if they couldn't go fishing at the perfect time, at the best time, then they just wouldn't go. So I'm gonna start this off by saying I'm not encouraging you to do that. The best time to go fishing is to go fishing when you should. The best time to go fishing, if you can't go then, is when you could. So anytime you can go fishing is the best time to go fishing. But if you can go fishing at the best time to go fishing, then that's the best time. Does that make sense? So here's what we're gonna talk about. How to fish, when to fish, where to fish, when you fish, based on using solunar data. So if I wake up in the morning of going fishing, or if I plan my trip the night before, or if I set a strategy for using my 3-day approach, I'm going to try to be in the best places at the best time. The best time is generally the #1 feeding period that happens during daylight hours. A lot of apps try to think for you. That means if it says best or fair or poor, it could be a great feeding day, but only in the middle of the night. So some of these apps actually adjust that for you. I'm a fan of using the app as a baseline, but actually learning what the vector tables mean and what they are, okay? And here's what the simple breakdown. Moon overhead, moon underfoot, moon set, and moon rise. And so the way that works is moon overhead is always your strongest or your primary feeding time. Moon underfoot is always your second strongest feeding time. And then moon rise is your third, and moon set is your fourth. The reason moon set is your fourth, because these are about the same, is because it happens after the primary. So because they fed up and they fed very aggressively before moon set, they're gonna feed a little less aggressive this time. And then they fed again in your moon underfoot, which is actually less aggressive than your moon overhead, so then their secondary is stronger. So this is a stronger secondary at moon rise than it is at moon set. It's a stronger primary at moon overhead than it is underfoot, because there's a direct pull, not a pull through Earth itself, and so therefore the influence is stronger. So if you've ever heard of a lunatic, right? What a lunatic means is that they're crazy because of the effect of the moon. We are all made of about 75% water. We have a lot of blood in our biomass, and that is acted upon by the forces of the sun and the moon. When those line up together, the force is stronger, and when they're apart, the force is weaker, and that's why it's not always the same. But a quick drill to learn what I'm talking about is to watch when you see wading birds. Watch to when you see them, standing on one leg and they're inactive, or perched up in a tree. When they're perched up in a tree, or when they're sitting still, or when they're nesting, it's an off-peak period. When they're out physically darting after bait fish, when they're out actually looking and aggressively hunting, when fish are busting bait on top, you're going to be in the middle of a peak feeding period, or you're going to be in a peak feeding period. Now, the things that'll change that is if a front is approaching, then the fish will generally feed ahead of time. It's like if you've got to cut your grass and you planned on doing it at 5 o'clock, when it got a little cooler, but it's a rain front's coming, you're going to jump out there and do it early. And bass are a lot, you know, predatory fish are a lot, and, you know, do the same thing, for example. In other words, they know if they don't feed now, they're going to have a harder time once the weather gets a little more turbid. So for moon phase, focus on fishing the primary feeding times with power fishing presentations, your buzz baits, your spinner baits, your top waters, your swim baits, and things that are fast moving, because the strike zone is bigger. Okay, I make this lion and gazelle analogy in a lot of my seminars. If you've ever watched a outdoor wildlife show where the lion is sitting there swatting flies and the gazelle walks in within 5 feet, that's an off-peak period. But when that lion is out there crouched alone and hunting and is willing to chase that gazelle half a mile to run it down, that's your primary feeding times. And bass are the predators. And the thing that's set in motion by this whole Solunar thing are the bait fish. They become active. They become, you know, they get up on the surface and start swimming. They're not suspended, or they're not stationary in cover. And so they set the entire conveyor belt of the feeding thing into motion. So your primary feeding time, moon overhead. Secondary, moon underfoot. Tertiary, moon rise. And then your fourth one is moon set. They're generally about an hour and a half to 2 hours long. A little more aggressive when the sun and moon are aligned, and a little less aggressive when they're offset. Okay, so watch your vector tables, and when they align and your peaks are higher, they're going to feed more aggressively, and your feeding time is going to be a little longer, and it's going to be a little more aggressive in the center. So when I challenge you to read and learn about this, you'll read and learn about it, and then you'll start to observe what you see out there, and it'll confirm it for you. I don't have to confirm it for you. If you watch your feeding time and you pay attention to surface activity, if you pay attention to when you catch fish on top water, if you pay attention to when they blitz, it'll always be when it's supposed to be. If it's not, there's another weather phenomenon going on, or there's something that's happening external that causes that to happen. You know, you can trick the system with things like the hydro wave, move into a flat, turn it on, fire the fish up, create an artificial situation by putting a lot of scent into the water and things like that, and you really can create an artificial feeding time. Topwater poppers a lot of times are saying to the bass that are dormant, hey, somebody's feeding, and it's like a fork or a knife hitting the plate, and you start to get hungry when your mom or your grandma or your wife is setting the table. It's those things that are the unnatural part. But if all things being equal, they're going to be more aggressive in the peak feeding times. They're going to be less aggressive in the off-peak times. But that doesn't mean that you don't go fishing when it's off-peak. It just means you adjust the way you fish. Use a slow-moving bait. Use a jig, a soft plastic, a Cinco, a Texas rigged worm, a crawfish bait, or something like that. So fish tight to cover and keep it in the strike zone longer in off-peaks, and fish really aggressively and cover a lot of water during the peak feeding times. That's my basic rundown on the moon phase. Do me a favor, comment below and let me know if that's a thorough enough explanation for you. I'll put some helpful links in the description box below for some good apps and some websites and some articles to read to give you more foundational knowledge on it. But really, if you start focusing on the primary feeding times, the secondary feeding times, and adjust your power fishing or your finesse or your fast moving and slow moving, your tight to cover and your aggressive topwater or aggressive search bait style fishing in your primary feeding times, you're going to have more success more of the time. You're going to catch more fish, but more importantly, you're going to increase your understanding of how everything is happening in the environment that you're in, and you'll be able to anticipate the next pattern that's going to be effective. You'll be able to anticipate where you should be, when you should be, how you should be, and why you should be in a particular area at a certain time throwing a particular thing. So that's my take on moon phase and Solunar data. Hopefully that's a demystification. Hopefully that's a better explanation. Hopefully that's the answer that you guys were looking for. But comment below, and if there's any specifics and I need to do a secondary or follow-up video, I'll be glad to do that. Give this video a big thumbs up if you like it. Don't forget to leave a comment. And as always, if you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you next time on Kayak Bassing TV.